Titor, time travel, NWO WW3 Dulce, Area 51, secret space program, nuclear fallout, chaos.
Just a preamble. We get this all the time that our John Titor sitting there in front of you in a nice landscape there. He is not the John Titor from 2000.
Okay.
And people have a hard time figuring that out, but there's a story behind that too, and John can tell you about that too. And Jason and I are here to support John, but it's John's story basically.
Okay. Well, it's great to see you again too, Jason. I had a blast with you last time, so this is long overdue.
I know we had a lot of fun.
Awesome.
So
You're down in Miami, right?
yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm in San Antonio, Texas.
Oh, okay.
Not my favorite place, but anyway.
Forget
Good
where I was
Mexican
going. Forget where I was going to go on that one.
Okay. And where are you at, Bob?
Brantford, Ontario.
Okay.
Just outside of Toronto.
And then, John, you are where?
I live in a government compound near Palmdale Airport.
A government compound. Wow. Like underground?
Well, what happened was when I first got out of the Air Force, I was living with my wife, and I'd known her for a long time, and we just decided we'd get married and we start living together at this place in Valencia, a little two-story house in Stevenson Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
And then the government contacted us and said that there'd been some threats and there's people that would like to know what I know. And my wife, she was with the 177th Time Travel Division also. She made it to major and basically gave her resignation. She was a little burned out, I think. And so I told her when I was done that I would join her. But what this is, the compound, 2 chain link fences with concertina wire, 24-hour guards that are armed, and guard dogs. And today we had an event. Somebody decided they were going to drive onto the compound, and they never got on, but when they got out of their 1-ton truck, they were told to get back in and drive away, and they didn't. And so the guy, evidently, they thought he was armed, so they loosed the dog on him. And then the EMTs showed up, and the dogs, they either seem to go for the throat or your crotch. So it's kind of disgusting, you know, in that you've got a few seconds to think about where you're going to put your hands.
Yeah.
He lives.
And then they call the sheriff simultaneously. They just push a button, and the sheriff rolls out, and the EMTs had him on a gurney, and they handcuffed him to the gurney, and they moved his truck and impounded it, and that was it. But what they did, they came in and told me we're on alert, and when we're on alert, I wear a gun. I that's what this is. So.
Okay.
But it's not the first time. We had 2 people that tried to get over the fence.
What state are you in?
California.
Okay, California. Are you down there by the desert, the Mojave Desert?
Well, Palmdale. Let me tell you why I hit on that.
Okay.
Was that you drive to Palmdale Airport and get on that airlines that's kind of famous for going to Area 51, Janus. You can fly from Palmdale to Area 51, flights every day. And if I go down Highway 14, I could be at Edwards Air Force Base. And from there, I can hitch a ride and go anywhere I want.
Okay. You have to stay on base?
No. We go out, but usually there's a couple people with us that are strapped when we go out. We get to go to the mall, we get to go to the doctors. We seem to do that a lot these days. We went to a play at downtown Los Angeles, and the bodyguards put suits on and we dressed for the affair, and we were fine.
They keep you on like a real tight leash, essentially? They don't want you. I mean, why do they do that, but yet they let you talk on Skype and write about it?
I was doing okay up till about the time that I got associated with Bob and Jason. And since that time, my handler, I have a handler, and he works for the federal government, but he won't tell you if it's NSA or CIA. He just says, you know, like, I'm your handler, and I'll tell you what you can do. And so I said, can I leave whenever I want? He says, yeah, but your life expectancy or the fact that you'll probably be kidnapped. My accreditation on the TR3B is out there. Most people don't know how to fly those things.
Okay, and those are just cut. I mean, those are cutting edge. They've got the real sharp angles on them, and right. They were. I think one of those was featured in the new X Files update that came out.
They've been around for a very long time. It's a little bit like the SR-71. Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
The SR-71 first flew in 1959, but some of the technology wasn't ours. Okay, forget about what the designers of the craft say. It wasn't all theirs. And the next thing that we find out is that this thing is like the highest flying jet and bomber we ever had. But they retired the SR-71 and they moved to the SR-91 Aurora. And these things fly faster than 5,000 miles an hour. And we never knew they existed except for Caltech. They used to fly over Caltech and Pasadena. And the guy came out one day, when these things fly over the surface, they create a seismic anomaly.
They're really noisy too, aren't they?
Yes. And if you're in Area 51, you hear them before you ever see them.
Okay.
Now, TR-3Bs are a little bit quieter, but they're a lot faster and they're intergalactic. You can, like they used to say with the space shuttle, they could fly it to Mars. But what they were really afraid of was that the crew, when they got there in a shuttle, would be crazy. The long space flight. But the TR-3B goes faster than the speed of light.
What kind of engine is it using, or motor?
The power plant is unique. It's not ours. It's not our design, but we can build it. And I fully describe the power plant in the book. It's in there, and it's very unique. But the TR-3B, like so many people know it exists. Jason and I both saw a video clip here the other day where Air Force One is landing in Seattle, and the two chase planes are TR-3Bs. We really thought here, just in the last couple of years, John Podesta, and I know John, we had chatted, and we thought they would make Disclosure and just finally say, the United States has a relationship with extraterrestrials, and we have signed agreements with them. At Area 51, we see gray aliens. And I have a personal friendship with one.
Where are they from?
Zeta Reticuli. Now, the reptilians also have a relationship with the U.S. government, but they won't tell you where they're from. They all view their personal security a little differently.
Are they really as hostile as a lot of people portray them to be?
Well, I would say no. And I know that they've used reptilians on Barack Obama's security detail, the White House security detail. And they have photographs of a reptilian. And the problem was he must have been not feeling well because he couldn't shapeshift all the way. And in light, in the right lighting, you could see what he was.
I saw that actually, and it was, it's like, wow, that was quite compelling because it was high definition and all the big players were there, the politicians from around the world, and it looked like some reptilian dude in a suit, literally. I saw that, and I had to do several takes on it, and then they tried to spin it on the news when it came. They did a little clip on the news, and they made a joke about it, and I can, but that was really fascinating. So the Dulce base, that's one thing that I've actually been out to the Archuleta Mesa, and I had an opportunity to go about 3/4 of the way up the mesa because somebody that lives out there took me up, but I just didn't dare go any further because the vehicle that I was in didn't have a decent spare tire, and it was getting really rocky. You talk about Dulce in the book, and what can you tell our audience here at the Leak Project about it? That's fascinating. Are there really multiple levels like Phil Schneider talks about?
It's in the book. We detail all the levels, and we talk about it, and that's where I really started my life and career. Dulce Base. And the interesting thing is that the U.S. government went through a period of time, and they were saying openly that 70% of high school graduates are not fit for military service. And so they were having a very large problem. They have the need for troops they can depend on worldwide, and they can't find them. And what has happened is that the federal government, with the aid of some black technology from the Greys, cloned human beings. Quite recently, the military command of Iran has come out and said that Barack Obama is a clone. And if you think about how many attempts there were on his life in his first term, it is more than possible that what we see now is a clone.
I've seen actually images of him with, it looks like a scar on his head, like a pretty big one, and there's been a lot of speculation about that. Also, if you look at one of the ancient pharaohs of Egypt, it looks like a carbon copy of Obama, so maybe that's the same DNA lineage, I don't know, but that is fascinating. So the Dulce deal, though, like, was that war with Phil Schneider, or that Phil Schneider talked about, that went on, was that real or was that made up?
You know, I've read his account, and he's not too far off. And the startling fact is, I am a clone. And I wasn't told I was a clone until I was probably at the height of my military career. And someone came into my quarters one day and said, I need to tell you something. And I said, what is it? You're a clone. And he basically told me, you were the best one we made. I never thought that I would be allowed to separate from the U.S. Air Force with that knowledge.
So when you were growing up then, you never really thought about your parents or anything like that? I mean, did you grow up literally on the compound?
What happened was they implanted memories. They have the ability to do that. They can wipe the slate clean. They can give you any memories and any level of intellect they want.
What kind of memories did they implant in you?
I had memories of a childhood and parents, but they weren't real.
So you started to wake up, essentially. I mean, how old were you when they told you then that you were a clone?
I was commander of the 177th Time Travel Division, and I had attained the rank of general. I was middle 40s, I think.
But this was in the year 2036 too, right? Around that time.
I was older than 40. They estimate my age to be somewhere around 70 now. So back 10, probably middle 50s.
Rex, we tried to do this many times, but the problem is that John has lived in different timelines and in different time periods. And so he might spend 3 years in space, but 40 years go by on Earth. And when he comes back to a timeline, he's only age 3, but everybody else around him is dead or gone or much older. So it's hard to gauge even how old he is. But when he woke up in Dulce that morning, he was 27. At least that's what he was told. And the memory implants that were inside of him basically said that he had passed all the tests to get into the military and had been chosen for this elite group of like-minded people, and that all his relatives had been told he had died in a crash or a military accident, and that was the only way to keep them from trying to look for him. But as it turned out, he really didn't have a family. They were all fabricated stories, but they were very real to him.
And John, also, I remember, I think it was in the late 90s when I guess it wasn't you, but it was one of your clones essentially that started to write about the experiences of what's going to happen in the future, Civil War, Hell on Earth, World War III, etc. And a lot of the things that were discussed have came to pass, and then some things haven't. But was that you, or was that? Let's talk about that.
Here's what happened. At the time I separated from the Air Force, I didn't think that I was going to be allowed off Area 51. I thought that I was either going to be a candidate for rendition for the rest of my life, or they would just outright kill me because I knew too much. And that's part of my problem today. I still know too much about historical events that could hurt people. And some of them need to be hurt. But I think that some disinformation was planted about me. They figured out where I was and they planted some disinformation, and I think it was deliberate. And I've always thought that. I started hearing about Art Bell before I ever even wrote anything or said anything. And people used to ask me, my God, don't you know Art Bell? Because he knows you. And I never spoke to the man. And then there's Oliver Williams, and he seems to know me too. But I have listened to radio talk shows, and our guest today is John Titor. And I'm just sitting there laughing. When they start talking about traveling in time in a late model Corvette, it ain't going to work.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about also. The IBM 5100 computer that's supposed to be the trick, the secret to time travel. Is that true, or is that disinformation?
Disinformation.
It's only one way to time travel, and that's in a spaceship.
Well, when I was at Area 51, I read a white paper by Dr. Michio Kaku. And I tried to talk to Dr. Kaku about this. And he wrote a white paper on a stationary time machine that used quantum physics. And the white paper was not easy to get through. It's a few pages, and I read it. And then they said, now we want you to come to orientation to see one. And sure enough, I was shown a stationary time machine that uses quantum physics. And it works. It requires a lot of power, and they have that there. And, Dr. Kalku, he is a brilliant scientist, but his paycheck comes from the U.S. government. So I would not expect him to ever come forward and say anything either way.
Okay.
He doesn't want to lose his funding. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Me, I don't care anymore. I'm too old.
Do you think this might be their way of kind of letting soft disclosure out, giving you the opportunity to talk about this kind of stuff, and then people can speculate whether it's legit or disinformation, I guess? So it's kind of like giving truth out in plain sight, yet they have plausible deniability, essentially?
Maybe. I just decided, and I talked to my wife about this, Marcia, and we both just decided we're going to start talking. The first thing that happened after I got qualified on a TR-3B was I had a crew, and our mission was to go in the future to 2050. And we went to 2050, and the environment in 2050, the Earth is warmer, the atmosphere is more screwed up than it already is. The krill in the ocean has started to die. When the krill die, it's a part of a food chain, and there's a whole list of things that swim in the ocean that are going to die off too. The problem with the oceans are they're dying. There is so much plastic in the oceans, it's ridiculous. The other day, Obama actually went to Midway Island, and there are dead birds on the beach. And if you open up the birds, there's all kinds of plastic inside the carcasses. And it's in the seals, in the fish. There's huge floating islands of plastic in the Pacific Ocean and in the Atlantic. What we found was that when the fisheries die off and third world countries that depend on fishing for food and a living, those countries move into civil disorder, domestic violence on a large scale. Some of these countries, it's tribal warfare continuously. They're fighting over food. Complicated by things like the Zika virus, Ebola virus. It's a living hell. And Al Gore tried to tell the American people with an inconvenient truth. And we didn't listen. And the sad thing is that in spite of all these naysayers, global warming is real. And when the poles finally get done melting and the seas rise as much as 50 to 60 feet, there will be parts of the United States that will be underwater, as well as Canada and the rest of the world. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. When we can't raise food, when we can't raise cattle, sheep, chickens, we can't feed our people, we're in a sorry state.
How far out did you go as far as time travel? What was the furthest they put you into the future?
2050.
And how long were you out there, John?
We made several trips to 2050. We go and we would do surveys of the entire planet. Then we did samplings of the oceans, atmospheric samplings. We did samplings of the fish, seabirds. We looked at the populations. And one of the things that really is disappointing is that there is so much civil unrest and police departments become overwhelmed. They are not really able to enforce the laws. And the military only protects military bases.
Is America still a powerful nation in 2050?
No. There isn't really what you would call a very powerful country anywhere in the world. But let me digress a little bit. We looked at something else that was very critical. We found in 2050 that a lot of people were dying of radiation poisoning. And we weren't told where the radiation poisoning was coming from. But we went back and we used online research. We looked at available internet resources in 2050, and we discovered there'd been an all-out nuclear war. And basically, I talk about it in the book. There is a war. 2017, 2018, the likelihood of a war between the United States and Iran and Russia, very real. And Iran will strike first. And what will happen is Iran will fly passenger aircraft that have been converted to basically be nothing less than missile platforms to launch cruise missiles from, cruise-like missiles, because that's really a U.S. design, but it's proliferated throughout the world. And the missiles will have MIRVs on them, multiple warheads on the tips. And these passenger planes will use the existing passenger travel lanes, and they'll fly behind and a little higher than normal passenger aircraft. And they will attack Israel, France, the UK, and the United States. The attack on the United States will take out Washington, D.C., and parts of Virginia and Langley, and it will be devastating. But don't worry, the U.S. retaliates.
Well, and then does China get involved with this also, or is this mainly just the three that you mentioned?
No, China, what happens is China starts to see radioactive air float their way. As soon as Israel is attacked, the Israelis have some 400.
Lost you there. You said 400 and then you got disconnected. Is anybody there? Bueller?
400 nuclear warheads. And what they do is I think they let loose about 300. And that it just takes out the major cities and the military bases. Mostly Republican guards are toast. And they take out Tehran. The Ayatollah, he escapes some of it because they put him in a bomb shelter. They've got one. They know they can be hit by missiles. And Hassan Rouhani, I think, survives too. But in the aftermath, all this, they're all dirty warheads going off. And the naval engagements are going on all over the war. You know, submarines against submarines, destroyers against destroyers, battleship against battleship, and then all the aircraft carriers. So there's, you know, like a lot of naval losses between Russia, the United States, UK, France, Israel. Iran doesn't have that big a navy, but the Russians, and the Russians bombers and fighter aircraft, their submarine fleet, I think they have about 400 nuclear submarines. They're all shooting at each other, and the radiation in the air is getting worse dynamically. And the Chinese, they try to go almost immediately for a ceasefire. And Putin says no. So what happens is there's some people that actually hunt down Vlad and kill him. And I don't know if Medvedev is in on it, but I would suspect, because Medvedev is the successor. And then finally, the last shot's fired, and everybody's sorry it happened. But the radiation poisoning has already been unleashed on the world. And global warming takes a pause, because what we have going on in the atmosphere is a nuclear winter. And we have about a solid year where the cloud cover is so bad and the radiation is so bad, you can't grow food. And when you can't grow food, what happens? You start to live off stored foodstuffs. When they're exhausted, starvation. It's not a pretty picture. In some places in Africa, cannibalism. Other parts of South America also. Southeast Asia, and then the diseases are running rampant. Well, World Health Organization is only a name. There's nothing. The UN, only a name. Everybody's trying to take care of what they have on the home front, and they just can't do it. And the people are dying. So, in the midst of everything, I come up with a plan to prevent World War III. And I detail it, I think, pretty well in the book and explain what we did. And the mission was sanctioned by what was left of the Joint Chiefs, and we went and did it. And we changed the timeline. We prevented it, or we staved it off. It doesn't mean that it still won't happen, because it happened before, very likely. But I'm hoping that people will read this book and they'll read about what happened, and maybe they'll blink, maybe. But they need to blink about the environment, and we just can't go on like we've been, but pretty much we're past the point of no return. And what I wrote about on the internet was that some of our best and brightest minds were suddenly turning up missing or turning up dead. And I was given command of two rather large TR-3Bs, intergalactic variety, and I did a survey of about 10 planets, 10 systems that could support life as we know it on Earth, under optimal conditions of weather. And I found out of the 10, I looked at worlds that were in decline, or civilizations were dying on them, or they had not really gotten to the stage yet on these worlds where they could support life, or they had very hostile life on them. But two looked very promising. And I'd say what they are in the book. In the Wolf system and in the Kepler system, there were two planets that would support off-world colonies. And so the United States, in conjunction with our NATO allies, began creating off-world colonies and taking some of our best and brightest people there, scientists, university professors, NASA scientists, military people, to these colonies. The colonies, until they are self-sufficient, till they can actually take the resources of the planet and use it to sustain the colonies without being resupplied from Earth, they're in jeopardy. But there are two colonies.
What is technology like when you get towards 2050? I know it sounds like it's a real scavenger type area, but obviously there's still pockets of, power and strength. It's kind of like you guys with, you said the 177th Brigade. Is that what you called it?
The 177th Time Travel Division.
Okay, I'm sorry, 177th Time Travel Division.
But the technology, we continue to get black technology in return for airspace and for spaceports. The U.S. Air Force has a very large spaceport where tall whites live at Creech Air Force Base in Nevada. It used to be the Indian Springs Gunnery Range, and then they spent probably billions turning it into an underground base for them. And we received technology from the tall whites, the gray aliens, and also the reptilians. We also have diplomatic relations with the Anunnaki.
Let's talk about the Anunnaki for just a moment if we can, because that's on a lot of people's minds right now. What are the Anunnaki?
They're a humanoid race, a warrior race, and I think they've roamed this galaxy looking for worlds that they could plunder and control, literally. They looked for gold. And they had a civilization on Mars. And Mars basically was incinerated in a nuclear war. And I believe that that war followed them to what was their colonies on Earth. And that nuclear bombs were set off on Earth, and possibly Mohenjo-Daro, and in Libya, I know there are background radioactive signals in both places and documentation in both places of detonations. So I believe that the Anunnaki ran afoul of someone, and I will tell you who it was. Basically, that hunted them down and dispersed them. But they managed to survive on Nibiru, which is the 10th planet in this solar system if you call Pluto a full-blown planet. Otherwise, it's the 9th planet. And Nibiru has an atmosphere, but the atmosphere is luminescence. And the reason it is because the Anunnaki did geoengineering on their atmosphere to create a luminescent atmosphere that gives off artificial light. And their capital city of Dillman on a spacecraft there, and basically connected to what is like their royal family. And these people are very old. They're 7.5 to 8 feet and better in height. And amazingly, they look like the Pharaoh Akhenaten. He was an extraterrestrial. So was Nefertiti. But they had a nemesis, and he hunted him down. And he literally had forces and technology to destroy the Anunnaki. And his name, and it's recorded in some ancient texts, and I'll tell you the name, Yahweh. And that is also the name that they use to refer to God.
Have you heard of Enki and Enlil?
Yes, they're Anunnaki.
Okay.
And they prayed to a god. The Anunnaki never thought of themselves as gods, but they prayed to their god. But Yahweh, he's the one that took them down.
So Yahweh, there's so much speculation about, is Yahweh the God of all? What is Yahweh?
Well, Jason and I are going to produce a book, and then the next book we are going to produce, and maybe even Bob can lend a hand with it. It's called Conversations with Yahweh.
Oh, you got to give us a teaser.
The teaser is that there is a transmission received by SETI, and it's a binary transmission, and they keep trying to break down the signal, and so they fail, and so they get the Russians to help them, and they break down a message, and basically Yahweh asks for a meeting, and I was aware of the decoded message, and I was briefed on it, and the Joint Chiefs gave me the task of getting to the origin of the signal. And the signal came from Cygnus. And a lot of old...
What did you call it again? I'm sorry to interrupt. What did you call that name?
Cygnus, Cygnus. And so I chased the signal there.
Well,
And
I mean, I was just going to say
took-
real quick. Oh, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say real quick. For a being to have that much power and control, and to be able to go after not only the Anunnaki, but take out tens of thousands of people here on Earth, because it's even talked about in the Bible. I mean, Yahweh does specifically say that he's a vengeful, jealous God, and he tells his people to go slaughter men, women, and children because of their bloodlines and their lineage. It's in the Old Testament.
I don't take everything in the Bible at face value.
I don't either.
And I will tell you that in the forthcoming book, Conversations with Yahweh, we're going to talk about those things, and it'll be illuminating for everyone. Like the question is asked, is he the God that the Muslims pray to? Is he the God of the Christians? Is he the one God? And the answer, we get an answer.
Fascinating. I certainly can't wait to pick up my copy of that. And Bob, you are just so amazing at the way you write. I mean, you're literally an artist, and your canvas is a blank page. You write some of the most amazing stories, and I certainly appreciate your work. And I would really like to, maybe discuss for a moment some ways that our audience that has an opportunity to listen to this podcast can send good energy your way. and if you maybe want to share kind of what you're going through right now, because your voice does sound a little bit different. We talked about that before the presentation.
Sure. About a month ago, everything was fine. Was looking forward to the launch of Disclosed, and looking forward to doing other books with Jason and John. And then all of a sudden, I got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and liver cancer, and my sort of life just immediately went downhill. I was given a year to live. I don't believe that's going to be the result. I have hope that I will beat this, and I'm using every means possible, from ordinary medical treatments to alternate therapy treatments. And I have some good days and some bad days, and unfortunately, this has been one of the better days. Although, as I said, my voice is not strong, and in other talk shows, I probably would talk a lot more. But as I said at the beginning, this is John's story. But I appreciate any kind of energy or prayers or anybody that has. I've been getting all kinds of wishful thoughts. So I appreciate that the greatest. And I know today, I mean, we talked a lot about things that John has experienced. One of the things that we haven't talked about, and when Jason and I first started to interview John, we basically thought we were writing a time traveler book, and about his experiences. But it soon became clear to us that he had government secrets involving aliens and treaties and what really has been going on for more than 70 years. The kind of stuff that everybody hopes the Hillary would release if she became president, or whoever becomes president. And based on everything that John has told us, there's absolutely no way in the world she would ever be allowed to release what she was may have released. Even that I have some doubts on. But so we soon realized that our book was going to be the Disclosure. This was a book that was going to reveal things that people had never heard of before, and made them really sit up and take notice, and basically believe what I've believed for many years now, that we don't live in the world we think we do, that there's a lot of control going on, and aliens are very real, and that the Greys and the reptilians and the tall whites play a huge role in giving black technology to the United States in return for basically telling the American people or that they don't exist, because that's one part of the treaty, that we'll give you whatever we can, but you can never reveal to the public that we exist. So there's a catch-22 there. And as John says in the book, when you get seduced with the ability to do time traveling and the ability to have off-world colonies, and know that this Earth is not going to last forever, and there's a way for people to leave it, you're never going to spill the beans. And whether or not the presidents know or not, I don't think John doesn't even know for sure, but some of them did. Kennedy was one of them.
Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, Reagan, he believes Reagan did too.
Absolutely. But I firmly believe that JFK was killed after he got a tour of Area 51.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked a little bit about his assassination, his brothers, Martin Luther King, and William Colby. All four of those were political assassinations.
Yeah. So it's been an incredible ride. The problem with the timeline is that timelines can change. And since John has left the group, he's pretty convinced that time traveling has continued, and who knows
Absolutely.
what they have done. And even the writing of this book may have changed the timeline.
This may
So
sound
we'll
kind
have
of,
to see.
Bob, this may sound kind of, far out there a little bit, but is there a way that with the connections that you have with John, maybe in the future there is a very easy cure for what you're going through, where they can just put you through some, easy type of therapy, you're fixed, then bring you back? I mean, is that a possibility?
Well, as I understand it, in the one future where the nuclear war happens, there isn't much medical treatment available. Hospitals no longer really can handle anything, so it's just not there. And I think he also explained to me that aliens can fix aliens, but they really can't fix humans. Different kind of technology. Although I've kidded with him, get the army to make a clone of me and just put my brain back in a new body, just like me, and we'll continue. So,
You know, that is not out of the realm of possibility, whether they would do it or not. I think
Yeah.
they could do that. Could they clone you? Yes. Could they move your memories to a clone? Yes. Would they do it? Would they openly say, yeah, we'll do it for you? Think about what kind of uproar that would cause worldwide.
but who would tell them?
Exactly.
Anybody that has cancer would be knocking on their door.
Yeah, but I wouldn't tell them.
You know?
I'd say I just all the treatment helped me.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing, I asked John this many times too, that he knows of 3 or 4 extraterrestrials that the United States recognizes, and at no time from 1978 when he woke up at Dulce to 2036 when he did his last mission, did he ever know anything about Palladians or any other species, Andromedans. Yet there are so many people out there that claim they have been part of that race or know that race, and it's hard to understand what to make of that, because they certainly aren't part of the United States elite group.
The great aliens told me that they were aware of some 80 or more species, but the only ones I've ever seen, Anunnaki, tall whites, reptilians, and grays.
And they're the only ones the United States has agreements with.
That is correct.
So what are the other ones doing if they do exist?
Doesn't mean they don't exist, but I haven't seen them. And I would think that I would have seen them at Dulce or Area 51.
Mhm.
They're both of those places, but Creech Air Force Base, I only made it there one time and didn't get to stay long. But there are other bases. I know there are.
And John, let me ask, why did you come back from the future timeline? I mean, how did you get that opportunity to go from there to here?
Well, it has to do with I followed orders to the letter. I always followed orders. And in so doing, I had orders from a member of the Joint Chiefs, and I think he was a 3-star general, and I did what he told me to do, and ultimately I was relieved of my command. And I'm sitting there at Area 51, and I'm packing up my bags trying to figure out if I'm just going to retire or what I'm going to do. I didn't know what they were going to do to me. And they said, well, we have a mission for you, and you're to go to Monterey, California to language school and learn Chinese and Mandarin and Cantonese. And just as soon as I could get to the point where I could speak it, do conversational, I couldn't read it. I mean, I could recognize some characters, but you know, that would be about it. But I could speak it and get by. And I was called back from Monterey, and I loved it there. But I was called back, and then I was given another mission to go to Nibiru. And I flew a TR-3B to Nibiru and met with the royal family. After that, I returned to Area 51, and I was asked, do you think in a straight up fight with the Anunnaki you could prevail? And I said that their technology would overwhelm us and that we would have no chance. But if I could catch them on the ground, there wasn't a way to beat them. And I was confident that I could do it. And they said, you'll get your chance. And so I got my chance in the book, and I actually go pit a very large army against probably what was 1,000 or so Anunnaki in a ground fight, and I managed to prevail. And when I returned from that mission, I wanted to retire, and I did.
Are you saying you took out some Anunnaki?
Yeah, it's not my most popular thing to say, but I did it.
And was it the royal family line that you're referring to?
I met with them, and one of the people there would actually lead an invasion force to Earth.
This was in ancient China, though.
Yeah. They went back, they were going back in time to ancient China to get a foothold on this planet. They were going to just erase the blackboard, everything that happened, and they were going to overthrow the first emperor of China. And I picked a battlefield there, and I prevailed. But you really have to read it in the book to understand everything that happened. But there is a way to defeat an army that's very technologically advanced, that have beam weapons or plasma weapons, whatever. You can defeat them, but only momentarily. You get a window of opportunity.
What did you do, like an EMP bomb on them or something?
You guessed it. An EMP, electronic magnetic pulse. I set one off as they were landing their forces. They had some spacecraft in orbit, in stationary orbit, and they were taken out for me by some extraterrestrial allies. And I had gained control of what was probably 10 to 15,000 of Chinese regular army.
Now, so you were there. This was happening in China. They were landing their craft. They were in orbit. What do they look like? I mean, walk us through it if you could. Give us paint the picture as best as you can for us and put us there, please.
The one thing that I noticed about the Anunnaki, they're gene splicers. And in ancient Egypt, we had these people that had animal heads, Anubis and Horus. And Horus was a winged entity. Those wings worked. They flew. And some people on Nibiru wore ceremonial wings, a set of what looked like a cross of wings on their back and on their ceremonial robes. And these were highly placed people and in the military. And these wings were only ceremonial and did not function. But these people are gene splicers. And we have received some of that technology, how to splice genes. And the most recent account I have to offer of gene splicing that has been loosed on mankind on this planet is something called chupacabra. And somebody got a hold of the technology and created an animal, and they have released it, and it is multiplying. And it attacks small farm animals and gets to be a pest. People have shot it and had taxidermists stuff it and display it, but it's a pest. Runs about 40 miles an hour. Will it attack a small child? Absolutely. Could it bring down a horse? I doubt it. Your bigger animals, cattle, would be a nuisance to them, but chupacabra is proof that that gene splicing technology has been tested on the planet recently.
Now, so is Horus an Anunnaki then?
Yes, a lot of the Egyptian gods, Isis and all that, and uh, they were Anunnaki. The Anunnaki tried to fold over their people as gods on the Egyptians.
Right. So that way they could kind of manipulate them. And are they able to harness their energy literally like at some other level? I mean, everybody, like, just as an example, for those that are listening to this podcast, if you're in a football team and you score a touchdown, the crowd goes wild, you're going to be like, yes, you're going to feel that energy. But are these guys, because of their technology, are they able to do it at a completely different level, like literally feed off of it at some quantum energy type deal?
Their technology and their whole sciences are similar to ours, and they have imparted some of their knowledge to us. Geoengineering and chemtrails, that is some of the engineering that we've received from them. I think.
What's the main purpose of the chemtrails, John?
They're trying to heal the atmosphere, and they're doing a piss poor job of it. They are also experimenting with ways to control hurricanes, and they're not doing a very good job of that either. What we're encountering is weather that is more severe, and the reason it's more severe, it's all part of global warming, what we're doing to the planet. It's just like they're having earthquakes in the Midwest, and it's a direct result of fracking. And fracking is so bad. You know, like they're chasing oil and superheating water to steam and trying to drive it to the surface. They should just abandon fracking. It's terrible. It pollutes the water in the ground. Long term, it should be a criminal act to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't appreciate a lot of the things that are going on with the planet right now. I went out to Wink, Texas several months ago, and there's these two enormous sinkholes out close to Wink, Texas that are literally getting bigger by the day. And that entire area, if you're driving a car or walking, even if you get into the township, the smell is just putrid, and it sets you back. You can really pick up on it. So hopefully there's, if you're really able to change these timelines and stuff, I hope that maybe if we can divert serious catastrophes and doom, maybe we can create a renaissance of sorts and look for technologies and abilities to clean the earth and cleanse the earth, heal it, not destroy it more.
I originally sent Marcia back to an earlier time in Earth's timeline to be an environmentalist lobbyist, and she spread millions of dollars around through various environmental groups and tried to assist Al Gore in getting his message out. And what we found was that it was Congress and the paid lobbyists of the oil and gas lobby that worked very hard against us. And ultimately, I'm going to lay the environmental demise of this country at the feet of congressmen who were paid by lobbyists to look the other way and to vote their protocol. We are the victims of a society that is about greed and very little else. They don't care about the future.
They care about their little box in that moment, and it's certainly unfortunate. Now, also, when you were on you went to Nibiru also. You met them here, the Anunnaki here in China, but you said you did go to Nibiru as well, correct?
Yes.
Can you describe what it's like out there? I mean, are there roads? Are there buildings?
Yeah.
What's the architecture like?
They have roads, they have libraries, they have museums, they have factories, they have apartment dwellings, and they have more stately homes that I would say are more like Spanish hacienda style. I would say that their atmosphere is luminescent. In other words, light bounces off the atmosphere and is magnified. So it's like riding in a car. You put glasses or sunglasses on to avoid the glare. So when you go out in an uncovered area or outside a building, you would put glasses on because of the glare from the atmosphere. But it's the glare. It's not about heat. It's about the glare from the atmosphere. And they actually do use gold, and they turn it into a powder, and they put something else with it, and it's in their atmosphere.
Okay. And then what's the economic structure like out there? The communities, essentially. I mean, what's it like for somebody that lives on planet Nibiru? Are there different classes and creeds? I mean, is there racism, prejudice?
Classes, there's different species. I mean, I saw extraterrestrials there at the spaceport where I landed, and I saw reptilians there trading with the Anunnaki. I saw tall whites there, and then I saw some other spacecraft that I had never seen before, but I didn't see who the occupants were. I basically was escorted from my ship to our diplomatic offices, and then on to this royal family's home and given an audience. But the city is called Dilmun, D-I-L-M-U-N. That's how they pronounce it, Dilmun. They don't have homeless people. They have hospitals. They have people that work at all classes. But what I was told there when I was getting the tour of Dilmun is that anybody who is capable of working and wants to work works. No one is denied what they feel is a very important right to work. Everybody has a job. Now, if you're disabled, that's one thing. If you're retired, that's another thing. But they basically what they told me was that after they turn a certain age, they actually give them a battery of tests, and by these tests, they're able to determine how to place them in a career path. And I would say that probably an overwhelming number of their people choose the military. And as I've said previously, they are a warrior race. They look for worlds to colonize, conquer, and plunder, subjugate. And they've done that on Earth in the past.
Some people think they still have a lot of control over the Earth. Do they?
I will tell you that Bob and Jason and I have seen modern day pictures of Anunnaki. I've seen them. And other people have too. The aliens, they make a big thing out of not being, they keep a low profile. And at the same time, you need to understand that one of the things that we have, and we receive this black technology cloaking of an individual can absolutely be cloaked. And we use the technology in the Iraqi war, and I actually showed the video clip of a member of the U.S. military using a cloaking suit, and he was invisible except there was a dust storm that day. And Al Jazeera videographer caught him and put him on video. But it's not a big thing. The technology's come a long way.
That's fascinating. And also, so Nibiru, basically everybody could work. How long would they live, though? You said they've got really long lifespans, right?
I was trying to ascertain that, but I believe that 300 or 400 years might not be a long time for them. There are some things that I was shown the military museum, and I was shown different weapons from different worlds, and some of their most modern weapons and they use particle beam technology and plasma weapons. Nuclear weapons, they understand those very well. They've been around for a long time. Nuclear weapons aren't new. And they've been used on this planet besides in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I think Mohenjo-Daro and Libya. Absolutely, those two places, I know for sure. And the Sinai. And then it's recorded that Yahweh absolutely is responsible for the nuclear detonations in the Sinai. He was killing off Anunnaki.
Now, also, Jason, if I could ask you this question, because you've got some amazing experiences as well, your book.
Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler.
Great book. And when you were on the show with us before, and Bob came with us, you talked about some of the experiences that you have had. Now, have you ever encountered anything like what John is referring to with Nibiru, the Anunnaki, etc.?
No, not in that aspect. But when I first met John and we had our first initial telephone conversation, he was talking about different timelines and what the environment would be like and what it felt like. And I have been to the exact same time periods in my journeys that he was talking about, and he was dead on. And also when he was talking about it, you can tell he was reliving these memories of being there. And it just confirmed a lot of questions that I had initially. So I know that the first book, Forbidden Knowledge, was very much a book about consciousness and outer body experiences and I would say remote viewing and astral traveling, different timelines. Whereas John is, he's physically done this. So it's a very, very good polarity from the Forbidden Knowledge book, which is it's a very philosophical and spiritual work, where John is very physical and gives a lot of information of real facts in this world. So you have very two polar opposite stories that are basically telling you the same storyline. So I found that to be absolutely fascinating to work with John with this book.
Because I remember also, Jason, you talked once about how you were in this environment that was just completely barren and devastated. It was destroyed.
Yeah, I was taken to a future timeline that literally looked like the aftermath of a nuclear war, and they even showed me the bombs being detonated, and the Earth was just basically a cinder. And people that were in the bunkers, that didn't help them at all. They were suffering greatly down there. And so when John was describing World War III, that brought back a lot of memories of what I was shown and confirmed a lot of things. But you remember in the program I said these are all potential futures, and my hope is that by knowing these future timelines, we have the ability to shift and change them. And I think the universe works in very mysterious ways because of that book Forbidden Knowledge, everybody was asking me the same question. So you're a time traveler, Jason. Do you know John Titor? And I said, no, I don't know John. But now that everybody's asking me about John, I'm going to find him. And it was almost like the universe just brought us right together at the right moment and the right time. And we hit it off. And Bob came into the conversation, and Bob and John hit it off. And what came out of our relationship was this story that John told us about his life, and it's captured in the book Disclosed. This book is shocking, and even reading it gives me still chills. But the information that's in there, there's a lot of stuff that has never been out before. And when me and Bob were compiling these stories, we're scratching our heads saying, this is amazing information because no one's connected these dots before, and no one's even talked about these things before. So John actually added a lot of information that wasn't available before. So the book, it's a real timepiece, and I hope that John is right, that this book will cause some major changes in the timeline because of what is actually in these pages.
Yeah, that's great. And also in the book, I was wondering if you could talk to us about the Assassination Bureau.
This is, I think John is very bitter about this chapter of his life, because that mission that John had with the assassinations kind of led him in the path where he is right now. And I'm pretty sure John will share that story and you will all be fascinated.
What happened was I was given the mission of investigating those 4 assassinations, and we sent people back in time and observed. And most of the time, a time traveler's mission is to not disturb the timeline. Sometimes he's there to preserve the timeline, but observation and report is what it's about. And in the Kennedy assassination, we had someone on the grassy knoll, we had someone down the street, we had someone across the street, and there was a triangulation of fire. And there wasn't any shooter in the Texas School Book Depository. Unique thing about the Kennedy assassination, there were actually 2 assassins, and they only caught one, Sirhan. There was another one that got away. And we actually followed the one that got away and followed him to his handlers. And they were people that worked for the government as contractors. And we documented everything. The time travel agents that I used, I wouldn't even let them put their names down on the reports they gave me. And the same thing with Martin Luther King. We tracked back the perpetrators, and we saw who their handlers were, and we documented that, and we photographed everything too on all 4 of these cases. And then uniquely, William Colby, who was director of the CIA, and then he resigns, and he's accused, after he resigned, by Walter Cronkite of being a mole for the Russians. And sometime after this, what happens is that he's found dead floating in a tributary of the Potomac. And William Colby was a very strong swimmer. I think that athletically, he was a very strong swimmer. So for him to be found drowned under these circumstances, at the time, I was just wondering how many people were standing on top of them. And sure enough, I sent agents to observe the assassination, and these people had telephoto lenses and cameras and everything. And we watched a friend come to his house, knock on the door, and go inside. And then later he was followed up by 3 other men, and then all 4 men basically removed Colby from the house, and he was drowned. You can't swim very well when they're holding your arms and legs, holding you upside down in the water. So.
Yeah, I would assume so. Geez, that's crazy. Now, and also...
So
go ahead.
All of the reports, I sent them up to the general that had given me the task to begin with, and then 2 weeks later, he died in a helicopter accident.
That's interesting.
And then shortly after that, I had 2 very tall gentlemen. They were probably both 7 foot tall or better. One was a brigadier general I'd never heard of before, and a full bird colonel. And they came down to Area 51 and gave me an Article 32 investigation and wanted to know if I had any copies of those reports or copies of the photographs. And everything had been digitized and transmitted, encrypted to the Joint Chief. And I did hold back a thumb drive.
Is that kind of like your protection, I guess?
When you look at those 4 assassinations, I mean, like, even there's like John and Bobby, his brother, and Martin Luther King, and then William Colby, but there's some other assassinations like Malcolm X, Larry Flint and his attorney, and they all had a similar style to them.
Larry Flint was assassinated? Wasn't he the guy that started Hustler?
Yes, but he was shot in the stomach, and so was the attorney, and they both lived, but Flint was permanently paralyzed. George Wallace, same thing happened to him, and he was permanently paralyzed. And that was a deliberate shot. You know, that you hit them dead center in the gut, and you break their spine. They live, you break their spine, and at that they don't always live.
Why did they pick them though? What was their deal?
You know, I would say that there was some real conservatism going on at that time in America. And there were some people that thought that they were above the law and they could make America into a conservative, religious, right-wing America, and that there was only one God and we better pray to that one God because we know he's a Christian God, correct?
Okay, so it was essentially just they were trying to prevent Flint and Hustler magazine from basically permeating the porno world, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely, and Malcolm X too. He you know, the Nation of Islam and the Muslim community, what he was trying to do for his people. I don't think it was a bad thing. I may be criticized for that statement.
Well, you know, here at Leak Project, you can get criticized for anything. I've been criticized for recommending organic apples, so it doesn't take much here. You know? You can't please everybody, man. I mean, seriously, I could give somebody the shirt off my back, and I'd get a hard time for, you know, the shirt being too small or too big. It's just the way the world turns. Yet, with that said, 99 out of 100 people are going to be really appreciative of that. But there's always that one donkey out there that, you know, has to be miserable and bring everybody else down with him. So, you know, you're bringing so much data to the table. It's difficult to grasp, and that's kind of why I'm asking you certain questions about, you know, describing what it's like on that planet and stuff, because we all hear about Nibiru, Planet X, and how it's got a 3,600-year orbit and it destroys everything in its path. But what you don't hear is what it's actually like on that planet, what the people are like, what the culture's like. And, you know, I've heard so many things that I have a tough time knowing what's true and what isn't. And certainly the kind of things you do, you probably have to question yourself sometimes going, wow, did I actually do that? I mean, just to be in that lifestyle, you've probably got to constantly check yourself to make sure, you know, pinch yourself to make sure you're awake.
There are some things that have happened to me that have left me with PTSD to a degree. I would say being in a pitched battle with the Anunnaki, and even though that you've taken their advanced weaponry out of the equation, I still sustained some very bad injuries. And the fighting was absolutely fierce. And I was criticized later, even at that. I was told to capture one spacecraft, and I did. I was told to kill them all, and I did. And what I told soldiers, you know, like I said, you have to fight them, you know, like because they're so tall and so strong, and some of them will be flying at you with weapons. You will have to fight them as a group of 4 or 5 and take them down with primitive weapons and then cut their heads off.
I could just imagine. So you said these guys are about 8 feet tall, right?
Yes.
So 8 feet tall, and they could probably bench press 400, 500 pounds. So, I mean, I would just think that it would be virtually impossible to take them on hand-for-hand combat, even if you're a mixed martial arts master.
Well, what I had equipped the Chinese army with were chromium-plated swords and repeating crossbows. And we actually put pictures of both in the book. And this was a new technology for them. But the Emperor of Qin went on to conquer all his enemies because he had repeating crossbows and chromium-plated swords. And the other thing, they still used halberds. And you could do a lot with a taller person using a halberd. And so you could inflict wounds on their legs and get them down. Once you've got them down, swarm them. And they were vastly outnumbered. And they were relying on technology that as soon as I set off that EMP, it wasn't going to work for them. And it was just a window of opportunity because you can get it. They have the technology to get around EMP, but it takes a little bit of thinking what just happened. They thought it was an explosion, but it wasn't. And as soon as I set it off, I had told my military commanders to attack.
How many of them were there?
I think there was probably between 800 and 1,000 an initial landing force, and some of them actually had, like in many drawings on in antiquity, bas reliefs, we have a Anunnaki flying in what looks like wings attached to a circle, and then the Anunnaki is standing in it and he's flying. I actually saw this vehicle on Nibiru, and you just walk up and step into it, and there's some controls, and it's like a one-man conveyance. They work. And I was offered the opportunity to actually fly one myself, but I just didn't have the time while I was there.
They're like a cleanup crew, so once you go back to the past and fight space beings, essentially all this text there, all these dead bodies of giants, what happens to all that stuff?
We did a cleanup. We had a little bonfire. We scattered the ashes. It was quite a little mess. I sustained some injuries, and I was blinded temporarily in one eye, and had some nerve damage that I still complain about in my face, and I had my left arm torn out of the socket. What happened was one of these flying Anunnaki with the head of a bird. It just totally unnerves you when you see it. Flew at me, grabbed me, and threw me probably 80, 90 feet. And when I landed, I was just unconscious for a minute. And then people rushed over to me and stood me up and wanted to take me off the field. And I said, if you take me off the field, we lose. I got to stand up and look like I'm okay. So I stood up. I'm bleeding profusely from my head, but I stood up. And it was over probably in about an hour and a half, I think.
Now, when stuff like that happens and everything's taken care of essentially, then you just fly back home in your TR-3B?
Pretty much.
That's
You
incredible.
punch in the coordinates and the year and the day you want to go back to, and the computer gets you there.
Wow, that sounds fascinating.
They have one thing very much in common with the B-52 bomber. They're designed to be upgradable, and it'll be an airframe that'll fly for a long time because the modular design of their controls and everything is just easy to upgrade.
Okay.
That's what I love about them.
And I guess one of the last things that maybe we could discuss tonight, and if there's something that I haven't brought up that I should, please let me know about. You discuss in the book, one of the last chapters, things they don't want you to know, things we are not supposed to know. Share a couple of those with us, if you would, John.
I just think that the treaties that we have with extraterrestrials, they don't want it known. They've been around. I think that Eisenhower was a signer of these treaties. I think that extraterrestrials are among us. I think that they control the government. I think there's a shadow government to a degree. In World War III, the extraterrestrials fight with NATO against our adversaries, and they deliver some horrific blows for us and for them, because they have what amounts to colonies on the planet Earth. The reptilians, the gray aliens, the tall whites, the Anunnaki, they're all here. They've infiltrated the government. They've seduced the government, giving us black technology. Do we have the ability to beam down and beam up? Absolutely. Yeah, we have the technology.
Absolutely. Well, I got to tell you, I mean, this is just a real pleasure to speak with all of you, and I would strongly recommend for those that have a chance to listen to this podcast here, The Week Project, pick up your copy. It just came out this month, Disclosed, Chronicles of John Titor II. Be prepared to have your mind blown. That's so awesome. I was actually going to say that at the beginning of the podcast, and I didn't even read that on the back of your book. Synchronicities. That's awesome. And I also want to thank you so much, Bob, for coming on with us. I know that you're not feeling good, and God bless you, man. We're certainly going to send energy your way and prayers to you. And Jason, it's a pleasure to speak with you again. Also, I wish you all the very best, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity to speak with you again sometime. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Rex. It's a pleasure.
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you.
Bob, get well.
Right on. And folks, I'd strongly recommend going to leakproject.com, become a contributing member at Leak Project, get access to exclusive content. Also subscribe to our YouTube channels, youtube.com/clandestine Time Lord and William Wallace. Have a fantastic day, everybody, and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Talk to you soon. Latest, Nibiru, John Titor, Time Travel, NWO WW3 Dulce, Area 51, Secret Space Program, Nuclear Fallout, Chaos.
Just a preamble. We get this all the time that our John Titor sitting there in front of you in a nice landscape there. He is not the John Titor from 2000.
Okay.
And people have a hard time figuring that out, but there's a story behind that too, and John can tell you about that too. And Jason and I are here to support John, but it's John's story basically.
Okay. Well, it's great to see you again too, Jason. I had a blast with you last time, so this is long overdue.
I know we had a lot of fun.
Awesome.
You're down in Miami, right?
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm in San Antonio, Texas.
Oh, okay.
Not my favorite place, but anyway.
Forget
Good
where I was
Mexican
going to go on that one.
Okay. And where are you at, Bob?
Brantford, Ontario.
Okay.
Just outside of Toronto.
And then, John, you are where?
I live in a government compound near Palmdale Airport.
A government compound. Wow. Like underground?
Well, what happened was when I first got out of the Air Force, I was living with my wife, and I'd known her for a long time, and we just decided we'd get married and we started living together at this place in Valencia, a little two-story house in Stevenson Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
And then the government contacted us and said that there'd been some threats and there's people that would like to know what I know. And my wife, she was with the 177th Time Travel Division also. She made it to major and basically gave her resignation. She was a little burned out, I think. And so I told her when I was done that I would join her. But what this is, the compound, 2 chain link fences with concertina wire, 24-hour guards that are armed, and guard dogs. And today we had an event. Somebody decided they were going to drive onto the compound, and they never got on, but when they got out of their 1-ton truck, they were told to get back in and drive away, and they didn't. And so the guy, evidently, they thought he was armed, so they loosed a dog on him. And then the EMTs showed up, and the dogs, they either seem to go for the throat or your crotch. So it's kind of disgusting, in that you've got a few seconds to think about where you're going to put your hands.
Yeah.
He lives
and then they call the sheriff simultaneously. They just push a button and the sheriff rolls out, and the EMTs had him on a gurney, and they handcuffed him to the gurney, and they moved his truck and impounded it, and that was it. But what they did, they came in and told me we're on alert, and when we're on alert, I wear a gun. I that's what this is. So.
Okay.
But it's not the first time. We had 2 people that tried to get over the fence.
What state are you in?
California.
Okay, California. Are you down there by the
But
desert, the Mojave Desert?
Well, Palmdale. Let me tell you why I hit on that.
Okay.
Was that you drive to Palmdale Airport and get on that airlines that's kind of famous for going to Area 51, Janice. You can fly from Palmdale to Area 51, flights every day. And if I go down Highway 14, I could be at Edwards Air Force Base. And from there, I can hitch a ride and go anywhere I want.
Okay. You have to stay on base?
No, we go out, but usually there's a couple people with us that are strapped when we go out. We get to go to the mall, we get to go to the doctors. We seem to do that a lot these days. We went to a play at downtown Los Angeles, and the bodyguards put suits on, and we dressed for the affair, and we were fine. Nobody really said anything.
They keep you on like a real tight leash, essentially. They don't want you. I mean, why do they do that? But yet they let you talk on Skype and write about it.
I was doing okay up till about the time that I got associated with Bob and Jason, and since that time, my handler, I have a handler, and he works for the federal government, but he won't tell you if it's NSA or CIA. He
Right.
just says, like, I'm your handler, and I'll tell you what you can do. And so I said, can I leave whenever I want? He says, yeah, but your life expectancy or the fact that you'll probably be kidnapped. My accreditation on the TR-3B is out there. Most people don't know how to fly those things.
Okay, and those are just those are cutting edge. They've got the real sharp angles on them, and right. I think one of those was featured in the new X-Files update that came out.
They've been around for a very long time. It's a little bit like the SR-71. Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
The SR-71 first flew in 1959, but some of the technology wasn't ours. Okay, forget about what the designers of the craft say. It wasn't all theirs. And the next thing that we find out is that this thing is like the highest flying jet and bomber we ever had. But they retired the SR-71 and they moved to the SR-91 Aurora. And these things fly faster than 5,000 miles an hour. And we never knew they existed except for Caltech. They used to fly over Caltech and Pasadena, and the guy came out one day, when these things fly over the surface, they create a seismic anomaly.
They're really noisy too, aren't they?
Yes. And if you're in Area 51, you hear them before you ever see them.
Okay.
Now, TR-3Bs are a little bit quieter, but they're a lot faster and they're intergalactic. You can, like they used to say with the space shuttle, they could fly it to Mars. But what they were really afraid of was that the crew, when they got there in a shuttle, would be crazy. The long space flight. But the TR-3B goes faster than the speed of light.
What kind of engine is it using, or motor?
The power plant is unique. It's not ours. It's not our design, but we can build it. And I fully describe the power plant in the book. It's in there, and it's very unique. But the TR-3B, like so many people know it exists. Jason and I both saw a video clip here the other day where Air Force One is landing in Seattle, and the two chase planes are TR-3Bs. We really thought here, just in the last couple of years, John Podesta, and I know John, we had chatted, and we thought they would make disclosure and just finally say, the United States has a relationship with extraterrestrials, and we have signed agreements with them. At Area 51, we see gray aliens. And I have a personal friendship with one.
Where are they from?
Zeta Reticuli. Now, the reptilians also have a relationship with the U.S. government, but they won't tell you where they're from. They all view their personal security a little differently.
Are they really as hostile as a lot of people portray them to be?
Well, I would say no. And I know that they've used reptilians on Barack Obama's security detail, the White House security detail. And they have photographs of a reptilian. And the problem was he must have been not feeling well because he couldn't shapeshift all the way. And in light, in the right lighting, you could see what he was.
I saw that actually, and it was, I mean, it's like, wow, that was quite compelling because it was high definition and all the big players were there, the politicians from around the world, and it looked like some reptilian dude in a suit. Literally, I saw that, and I had to do several takes on it, and then they tried to spin it on the news when it came. They did a little clip on the news, and they made a joke about it, and I can, but that was really fascinating. So the Dulce Base, that's one thing that I've actually been out to the Archuleta Mesa, and I had an opportunity to go about 3/4 of the way up the mesa because somebody that lives out there took me up, but I just didn't dare go any further because the vehicle that I was in didn't have a decent spare tire, and it was getting really rocky. You talk about Dulce in the book, and what can you tell our audience here at the Leak Project about it? That's fascinating. Are there really multiple levels like Phil Schneider talks about?
It's in the book. We detail all the levels, and we talk about it, and that's where I really started my life and career. Dulce Base. And the interesting thing is that the U.S. government went through a period of time, and they were saying openly that 70% of high school graduates are not fit for military service. And so they were having a very large problem. They have the need for troops they can depend on worldwide, and they can't find them. And what has happened is that the federal government, with the aid of some black technology from the Greys, cloned human beings. Quite recently, the military command of Iran has come out and said that Barack Obama is a clone. And if you think about how many attempts there were on his life in his first term, it is more than possible that what we see now is a clone.
I've seen actually images of him with, it looks like a scar on his head, like a pretty big one, and there's been a lot of speculation about that. Also, if you look at one of the ancient pharaohs of Egypt, it looks like a carbon copy of Obama, so maybe that's the same DNA lineage, I don't know, but that is fascinating. So the Dulce deal, though, like, was that war with Phil Schneider, or that Phil Schneider talked about that went on, was that real or was that made up?
You know, I've read his account, and he's not too far off. And the startling fact is, I am a clone. And I wasn't told I was a clone until I was probably at the height of my military career. And someone came into my quarters one day and said, I need to tell you something. And I said, what is it? You're a clone. And he basically told me, you were the best one we made. I never thought that I would be allowed to separate from the U.S. Air Force with that knowledge.
So when you were growing up then, you never really thought about your parents or anything like that? I mean, did you grow up literally on the compound?
What happened was they implanted memories. They have the ability to do that. They can wipe the slate clean. They can give you any memories and any level of intellect they want.